There are moments in television that don't just move you, they break you, not with drama, not with music, but with truth. And one of those moments came in the final minutes of Little House on the Prairie Season 8, in an episode simply titled, "As Long as We're Together." It wasn't flashy. No villains. No courtroom speeches. Just a family packing up their lives, leaving behind the only home they'd known and walking away from everything. If you've seen it, you remember it. You might have even had to pause it. Because this wasn't just storytelling. It was soul-deep sadness. And today, I want to walk through it with you, scene by scene, not as analysis, but as remembrance, because this episode wasn't just well written. It wasn't just flawlessly acted. It was real, and it still echoes in the hearts of everyone who's ever had to say goodbye. Let's begin where it all starts to end. The empty Mercantile. We see the Oleson store, once full of color, lace, and Harriet's pride, now stripped bare, shelves empty, counters cleared, mirrors gone. Even the Oleson's Mercantile sign has been taken down, and standing in the middle of it, Harriet Oleson. Alone. She doesn't cry. She doesn't yell. She just looks at the floor, at the walls, at the space where her life used to be, and in that silence, you feel it, the weight of loss. Because this wasn't just a store. It was her identity, her place in Walnut Grove. And now, it's gone, and she's left with nothing but memory. And then Caroline Ingalls walks in, and what happens next isn't dramatic. It's quiet. They don't hug, they don't weep, but they look at each other. And in that look, there's understanding. Two women, so different in values, in lifestyle, in how they raise their children, standing together in shared sorrow because both have lost their homes. And Caroline says gently, "I'll miss seeing you across the street." And Harriet, after a long pause, replies, "I'll miss seeing you too." And that's it. No grand speech, no tears, just two women on opposite sides of life, finally seeing each other. Not as enemies, but as people. And it's one of the most beautiful moments in the entire series, because it reminds us, grief doesn't care about rivalry, it doesn't care about pride, it just asks to be felt, and they felt it. Together. Now, let's go back to the Ingalls house. The empty kitchen. Caroline stands alone in the kitchen, the heart of the home, the room where she cooked meals, where she comforted crying children, where Charles kissed her good morning. And now, it's empty. Tables gone, cabinets bare. Even the stove has been removed, and she walks slowly through it, touching the walls, pausing at the sink. And then, softly, she says, "Charles was so proud when he gave me running water." That line, so simple, so small, and yet it destroys you, because it's not about plumbing. It's about love, about a man who worked his hands raw, not for riches, but so his wife wouldn't have to carry water from the well every day. And in that moment, Caroline isn't thinking about the future, she's thinking about the past, about the years they built here, the storms they survived, the joy they made in this very room. And now, they're leaving, not because they want to, but because the railroad is coming. Progress. And progress doesn't ask permission, it just takes. And as she stands there, a woman of quiet strength, you see it, the grief, the gratitude, the love, all wrapped in silence, and you realize, home isn't a house, it's the memories inside it, and she's carrying them, even if the walls stay behind. Now, let's go outside. The loaded wagon. The wagon is packed. Belongings tied down. Children sitting quietly. Laura, Mary, Carrie, No laughter, no arguing, just stillness. And Charles and Caroline stand side by side, looking at the farm, the fields they plowed, the barn where animals were born, the porch where they sat under stars. And Charles says, voice low, steady, we did our best here. And Caroline nods. And without another word, they get in and the wagon starts to move, and the camera pulls back, and we watch as the Ingalls family, once the heart of Plum Creek, drives away, and it hurts, because this wasn't just a move, it was a loss of land, of legacy, of belonging, and the show didn't rush it. It let us sit in it, in the quiet, in the sadness, in the love, and that's why it hit so hard, because Little House wasn't just about pioneer life. It was about what happens when life changes, and you have no choice but to go. Now, let's talk about why this episode matters. Because it wasn't just about leaving a farm, it was about leaving identity. For 9 seasons, we watched the Ingalls build a life from nothing. They survived blizzards, fire, illness, poverty, and every time they stayed, they rebuilt, they held on, but this time, they couldn't, and that made it different. This wasn't a challenge they could fight. It was something bigger, something beyond control, and in that helplessness, we saw them, not as heroes, but as people. Real ones, who loved deeply, who grieved silently, and who found strength not in winning, but in staying together, and the title? As long as we're together. It wasn't just a phrase, it was a promise, a lifeline, because when everything else is gone, the house, the land, the community, all you have is each other, and that's enough. Charles and Caroline knew that, and so did the writers, and so did the actors. Because the performances in this episode, they weren't acted, they were lived. Melissa Gilbert said later, "We weren't pretending to be sad. We were sad. This show was ending for us too, and you can feel it." In Karen Grassel's eyes as she touches the empty sink. In Michael Landon's voice as he says, "We did our best." In the way the children sit, not talking, just holding on. Even Allison Arngrim, playing. Harriet brought real emotion to her final scene, because this wasn't just fiction, it was closure. For the characters, for the cast, for the fans. And the beauty of it? There was no big speech, no dramatic music, no last-minute miracle, just truth, and truth is always quiet. Now, let's think about what this episode taught us, because Little House wasn't just about the past, it was about lessons for today. And this episode? It's for anyone who's ever had to leave. Leave a home. Leave a job. Leave a relationship. Leave a dream. Because sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you have to walk away. And that doesn't mean you failed. It means you survived. And as long as you're not alone, you're not broken. You're just beginning again. And that's what the Ingalls did. They didn't win. They didn't stay. But they kept going together. And that's the greatest victory of all. So, the next time you watch, As Long as We're Together, don't just see a family moving. See a family holding on to each other, to love, to hope. And know this: every time that wagon rolls out of frame, it carries something with it, not just furniture, not just clothes, but memory of a home, of a life, of a love that didn't end, just changed form. And somewhere in the wind over Plum Creek, you can still hear it, the creak of the wheels, the whisper of the prairie, and the quiet promise. As long as we're together, we'll be okay. And we believe it, because they made us believe. And that's the power of Little House on the Prairie. Not in the happy endings, but in the honest ones. And this was one of the truest,